Give us the detail of your time spent working alongside JD Vance and what you learned about him. And for full disclosure, we got you on the show because you are quoted in that Bloomberg story overnight that we were just discussing with Michael.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I had a fantastic experience with JD. I worked with him for about a year when he was just starting out in Silicon Valley, when he was just starting out as a venture capitalist. And he was fantastic to work with. I mean, everyone knows how intelligent he is. But one thing that really shone through in those early days working with him one-on-one, sitting down with founders, listening to their stories, evaluating deals, was how smart he is and how hardworking he was, and he continues to be. You can't be a polymath and get up to speed on a lot of different industries unless you're both smart and willing to put in the time and put in the work. And I found in him an eager, utterly without ego, smart, hardworking, really fun guy whose values were very centered. And, and there's been a lot of talk about how JD is a Silicon Valley candidate.
Yes.
And yes, on the one hand, that's true. He's going to be good for Silicon Valley. He's going to be good for the country because he is pro-growth, he is pro-innovation, and he's also pro-eliminating those regulations that strangle industry, that strangle growth. But that's really only
Crystal,
part...
one quick point on that our editors were at pains this morning to point out there's a difference between an association with venture capital and the technology industry at large. His position on big tech is very clear, actually. He's in favor of breaking up big tech and increased oversight by the FTC. That might be at odds with the rest of the Republican base. As a venture capitalist, what do you make of that?
As a venture capitalist and as a former antitrust lawyer way back when, I can say unequivocally that predatory behavior on the part of large firms with market power is unequivocally bad for the economy. It's bad, and particularly when those companies control a lot of the speech that we see and control our access to information, it's bad for our democracy. So as a former antitrust lawyer, as a VC, as someone who cares about our democracy and freedom of speech, I unequivocally agree with JD on his skepticism and concern about some of the very large technology companies in our economy.
I'm interested, Crystal, to go back to it. And do you think JD Vance himself will be kind of critical of the way we're all going berserk that there's a VC in the White House?
I'm so sorry. I didn't completely...
What Cara was saying... I'll jump in, Cara. What Caroline was saying is that what do you think JD Vance makes of all of the media coverage that he's a venture capitalist or former VC and he's now potentially going to be in an administration?
JD is an extremely humble guy. I remember when his book first came out, he was, gobsmacked by how much attention he got and by how much his words meant to so many people. So I imagine that he is feeling a lot of humility right now in general for being, at being chosen for the vice presidential pick by President Trump. And I think that he would feel this, the same way that I'm expressing right now, which is fundamentally, and even on day one when he was in Silicon Valley, his driving force is his concern for the forgotten working class, the people in this nation, at this nation's core, who have suffered because of the hollowing out of traditional industry and the opioid epidemic. That was what animated his desire to write his book, which was extremely raw, extremely vulnerable, and really he sacrificed his own privacy to shine a light on a huge problem facing our nation's core that he wanted to make better. I think that, my experience with him when he was working in venture capital was this was his primary driving force. This was at the core of his identity. So yes, he'll be good for Silicon Valley because he is pro-growth, he's pro-innovation, he's pro-open source, and he is pro the innovation economy. And he's going to be really good for the country because of his genuine compassion for the forgotten middle class, for the forgotten working class.
But Crystal, many feel that venture capital doesn't help the forgotten middle class. Many feel that, in fact, artificial intelligence is going to do a disservice to it yet more. Can you twin for us what seems to be almost at loggerheads, that here's someone who really cares about the hollowing out, who really cares about an opioid crisis, about the forgotten, at the same time as he's backing startup companies that perhaps, take away jobs from blue-collar workers yet further? Do you think he was in any way trying to dovetail those two things together when you worked with him?
Well, I don't see AI replacing steelworkers anytime soon. And, one of the things that venture capital is an enormous category. Everything from social media to national security technology, which is a space that I work in, to healthcare, And I think that, the best technology is the one that moves things forward. It's the one that provides enhanced capabilities for reduced cost. A lot of venture capital dollars are going in directions that I think are destructive for our society. We've certainly seen the destructive force of social media on family structures, on teenagers. So there is a whole category of companies that are invested in by venture capital firms that are extremely destructive to the fabric of American society. And then there is a whole other section of companies that are invested in that truly will, answer our prayers. It will make us as a nation healthier and safer. That is the area where I invest. That is the area where Peter Thiel focuses a lot of his attention. That is where JD was investing. That's where his firm, Colin Greenspan, a former colleague of mine who worked with JD at his fund, that's where his focus is. So I think it's hard to lump all of venture capital together in one bucket.